Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. We are doing Brothers Grimm fairy tales, short stories, whatever you want to call it. Someone on YouTube suggested I put ambient music in the background or something. Not really sure how to do that while avoiding copyright. So maybe I'll make my own. Maybe I'll do a little something on a keyboard. First, I'll figure out how to play piano. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. Right now, we do not have that. So we are just doing Grimm fairy tales. Tomorrow, I will not be here at noon. We are finally getting our hot water heater dealt with. So that's going to be during stream time tomorrow. So I'm not going to do that, but I think I might do a little after work stream. And I think I'm going to read one of the longer stories from the Necronomicon that I kind of passed over Sunday when I did it. Because there's one it's pretty long. It's probably going to be an hour and a bit, and I'm rather interested in it. So let's get into it. Let's do it. Today's first story is called The Raven. There was once a queen, and she had a little daughter who was as yet a babe in her arms. And once the child was so restless that the mother could get no peace, do what she would, so she lost patience. And seeing a flight of ravens passing over the castle, she opened the window and said to her child, "Oh, that thou wert a raven and couldst fly away, and that I might be at peace." No sooner had she uttered the words than the child was indeed changed into a raven, and fluttered from her arms out of the window. And she flew into a dark wood, and stayed there a long time, and her parents knew nothing of her. Once a man was passing through the wood, and he heard the raven cry, and he followed the voice. And when he came near, it said, "I was born a king's daughter, and have been bewitched, but thou canst set me free." "What shall I do?" asked the man. "Go deeper into the wood," said she, "and thou shalt find a house, and an old woman sitting in it. And she will offer thee meat and drink, but thou must take none. If thou eatest or drinkest, thou fallest into a deep sleep, and canst not set me free at all. In the garden behind the house is a big heap of tan. Stand upon that, and wait for me. 3 days, at about the middle of the day, shall I come to thee in a car drawn by 4 white horses the first time, by 4 red ones the second time, and lastly by 4 black ones. If thou art not waking but sleeping, thou failest to set me free." The man promised to do all she said. "But ah," she cried, "I know quite well I shall not be set free of thee. Something thou wilt surely take from the old woman." But the man promised yet once more that certainly he would not touch the meat or the drink. But when he came to the house, the old woman came up to him. "My poor man," she said to him, "you are quite tired out. Come and be refreshed, and eat and drink." "No," said the man, "I will eat and drink nothing." But she left him no peace, saying, "Even if you eat nothing, take a draught out of this cup once and away." So he was overpersuaded, and he drank. In the afternoon, about 2 o'clock, he went out into the garden to stand upon the tan heap and wait for the raven. As he stood there, he felt all at once so tired that he could bear it no longer, and laid himself down for a little, but not to sleep. But no sooner was he stretched at length than his eyes closed of themselves, and he fell asleep and slept so sound as if nothing in the world could awaken him. At 2 o'clock came the raven in the car drawn by 4 white horses, but she was sad, knowing already that the man would be asleep, and so, when she came into the garden, there he lay sure enough. And she got out of the car and shook him and called to him, but he did not wake. The next day at noon the old woman came and brought him meat and drink, but he would take none. But she left him no peace, and persuaded him until he took a draught out of the cup. It's draught beer. Yeah. About 2 o'clock he went into the garden to stand upon the tan heap and wait for the raven, but he was overcome with so great a weariness that his limbs would no longer hold him up, and whether he would or no, he had to lie down, and he fell into a deep sleep. And when the raven came up with her 4 red horses, she was sad, knowing already that the man would be asleep. And she went up to him, and there he lay, and nothing would wake him. The next day the old woman came and asked what was the matter with him, and if he wanted to die, that he would neither eat nor drink. But he answered, I neither can nor will eat and drink." But she brought the dishes of food and a cup of wine, and placed them before him. And when the smell came in his nostrils, he could not refrain, but took a deep draught. When the hour drew near, he went into the garden and stood on the tan heap to wait for the king's daughter. As time went on, he grew more and more weary, and at last he laid himself down and slept like a stone. At 2 o'clock came the raven with 4 black horses, and the car and all was black. And she was sad, knowing already that he was sleeping, and would not be able to set her free. And when she came up to him, there he lay and slept. She shook him and called to him, but she could not wake him. Then she laid a loaf by his side and some meat and a flask of wine, for now, however much he ate and drank, it could not matter. And she took a ring of gold from her finger and put it on his finger, and her name was engraven on it. And lastly, she laid by him a letter in which was set down what she had given him, and that all was of no use. And further also it said, I see that here thou canst not save me, but if thy mind is to the thing, come to the golden castle of Stromberg. I know well that if thou willst, thou canst. And then when all this was done, she got into her car and went to the golden castle of Stromberg. When the man waked and perceived that he had been to sleep, he was sad at heart to think that she had been gone and that he had not set her free. Then, catching sight of what lay beside him, he read the letter that told him all. As he rose up and set off once to go to the gold castle of Stromberg, though he knew not where it was. And when he had wandered about in the world for a long time, he came to a dark wood, and there spent a fortnight trying to find the way out, but not being able. At the end of this time, it being towards evening, he was so tired that he laid himself down under a clump of bushes and went to sleep. The next day he went on again, and in the evening, when he was going to lie down again to rest, he heard howlings and lamentations, so that he could not sleep. At about the hour when lamps are lighted, he looked up and saw a light glimmer in the forest, and he got up and followed it, and he found that it came from a house that looked very small indeed, because there stood a giant before it. And the man thought to himself that if he were to try to enter and the giant were to see him, it would go hard, but he should lose his life. At last he made up his mind and walked in, and the giant saw him. I am glad thou art come, said he. It is now a long time since I have had anything to eat. I shall make a good supper of thee. That may be, said the man, but I shall not relish it. Besides, if thou desirest to eat, I have somewhat here that may satisfy thee. If that is true, answered the giant, thou mayest make thy mind easy. It was only for want of something better that I wished to devour thee. Then they went in and placed themselves at the table, and the man brought out bread, meat, and wine in plenty. This pleases me well, said the giant, and he ate to his heart's content. After a while the man asked him if he could tell him where the golden castle of Stromberg was. I will look on my land chart, said the giant, for on it all towns and villages and houses are marked. So he fetched the land chart which was in his room and sought for the castle, but it was not to be found. Never mind, said he. I have upstairs in the cupboard much bigger maps than this. We will have a look at them. So they did, but in vain. And now the man wanted to pursue his journey, but the giant begged him to stay a few days longer, until his brother, who had gone to get in a store of provisions, should return. When the brother came, they asked him about the golden castle of Stromberg. When I have had time to eat a meal and be satisfied, I will look at the map. That being done, he went into his room with them, and they looked at the maps, but he could not find anything. Then he fetched other old maps, and they never left off searching until they found the golden castle of Stromberg, but it was many thousands of miles away. How shall I ever get there, said the man. I have a couple of hours to spare, said the giant, and I will set you on your way, but I shall have to come back and look after the child that we have in the house with us. Then the giant bore the man until within about 100 hours' journey of the castle, and saying, You can manage the rest of the way by yourself. He departed, and the man went on day and night until at last he came to the golden castle of Stromberg. It stood on a mountain of glass, and he could see the enchanted princess driving around it, and then passing inside the gates. He was rejoiced when he saw her, and began at once to climb the mountain to get to her. But it was so slippery, as fast he went, he fell back again. And when he saw this, he felt he should never reach her, and he was full of grief, and resolved at least to stay at the foot of the mountain and wait for her. So he built himself a hut and sat there and waited a whole year, and every day he saw the princess drive round and pass in, and was never able to reach her. One day he looked out of his hut and saw 3 robbers fighting, and called out, Mercy on us! Hearing a voice, they stopped for a moment, and went on again beating one another in a dreadful manner. Again he cried out, Mercy on us! They stopped and listened and looked about them, and then went on again. And he cried out a third time, Mercy on us! And then, thinking he would go and see what was the matter, he went out and asked them what they were fighting for. One of them told him he had found a stick which would open any door only by knocking at it. The second said that he had found a cloak which, if he put it on, made him invisible. The third said he was possessed of a horse that would ride over everything, even a glass mountain. Now they had fought because they could not agree whether they should enjoy these things in common or separately. Suppose we make a bargain, said the man. It is true I have no money, but I have other things yet more valuable to exchange for these. I must, however, make trial of them beforehand, to see if you have spoken truth concerning them. So they let him mount the horse and put the cloak round him, and they gave him the stick to his hand. And as soon as he had all this, he was no longer to be seen. But laying about him well, he gave them all a sound thrashing, crying out, Now you good-for-nothing fellows, you have got what you deserve. Perhaps you will be satisfied now. Then he rode up the glass mountain, and when he reached the castle gates, he found them locked. But he beat with his stick upon the door, and it opened at once. And he walked in and up the stairs to the great room where sat the princess with a golden cup and wine before her. She could not see him so long as the cloak was on him, but drawing near to her, he pulled off the ring she had given him and threw it into a cup with a clang. "This is my ring," she cried, "and the man who is to set me free must be here too." But though she sought through the whole castle, she found him not. He had gone outside, seated himself on his horse, and thrown off the cloak. And when she came to look out the door, she saw him and shrieked out for joy. And he dismounted and took her in his arms, and she kissed him, saying, "Now hast thou set me free from my enchantment, and tomorrow we will be married." Yeah. Pretty much just that, I guess. Next is called The Frog Prince. I think after this book is done, I think I'm going to do The Prince and the Pauper, because I forgot I had that one, which is why I was like, oh, maybe I'll do Grimm next. I forgot I had it, and Barbie's Princess and the Pauper is my favorite ever. So it'd be interesting to look into the source material. Next is The Frog Prince, as I said. In the old times, when it was still of some use to wish for the things one wanted, there lived a king whose daughters were all handsome, but the youngest was so beautiful that the sun himself, who had seen so much, wondered each time he shone over her because of her beauty. Near the royal castle there was a great dark wood, and in the wood under an old linen tree was a well. And when the day was hot, the king's daughter used to go forth into the wood and sit by the brink of the cool well, and if the time seemed long, she would take out a golden ball and throw it up and catch it again. And this was her favorite pastime. Now it happened one day that the golden ball, instead of falling back into the maiden's little hand, which had sent it aloft, dropped to the ground near the edge of the well and rolled in. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes as it sank, but the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Then she began to weep, and she wept and wept as if she could never be comforted. And in the midst of her weeping she heard a voice saying to her, "What ails thee, king's daughter? Thy tears would melt a heart of stone." And when she looked to see where the voice came from, there was nothing but a frog stretching his thick, ugly head out of the water. "Oh, is that you, old waddler?" said she. "I weep because my golden ball has fallen into the well." "Never mind, do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help you, but what will you give me if I fetch up your ball again?" "Excuse me." "Whatever you like, dear frog," said she. "Any of my clothes, my pearls and jewels, or even the golden crown that I wear." "Thy clothes, thy pearls and jewels, and thy golden crown are not for me," answered the frog. "But if thou wouldst love me, and have me for thy companion and playfellow, and let me sit by thee at table, and eat from thy plate, and drink from thy cup, and sleep in thy little bed, if thou wouldst promise all this, then I would dive below the water and fetch thee thy golden ball again." "Oh, yes," she answered, "I promise it all, whatever you want, if you will only get me my ball again." But she thought to herself, what nonsense he talks, as if he could do anything but sit in the water and croak with the other frogs, or could possibly be anyone's companion. But the frog, as soon as he heard her promise, drew his head under the water and sank down out of sight, but after a while he came up to the surface again with the ball in his mouth, and he threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was overjoyed to see her pretty plaything again, and she caught it up and ran off with it. "Stop! Stop!" cried the frog. "Take me up too! I cannot run as fast as you." But it was of no use, for croak after her as he might, she would not listen to him, but made haste home, and very soon forgot all about the poor frog, who had to betake himself to his well again. The next day, when the king's daughter was sitting at table with the king and all the court, and eating from her golden plate, there came something pitter-patter up the marble stairs, and then there came a knocking at the door, and a voice crying, "Youngest king's daughter, let me in." And she got up and ran to see who it could be, but when she opened the door, there was the frog sitting outside. Then she shut the door hastily and went back to her seat, feeling very uneasy. The king noticed how quickly her heart was beating and said, "My child, what are you afraid of? Is there a giant standing at the door ready to carry you away?" "Oh, no," answered she, "not a giant, but a horrid frog." "And what does the frog want?" asked the king. "Oh, dear father," answered she, "when I was sitting by the well yesterday and playing with my golden ball, it fell into the water, and while I was crying for the loss of it, the frog came and got it again for me on condition I would let him be my companion. But I never thought that he could leave the water and come after me. And now here he is outside the door, and he wants to come in to me." And then they all heard him knocking the second time and crying, "Youngest king's daughter, open to me. By the well water, what promised you me? Youngest king's daughter, now open to me." "That which thou hast promised must thou perform," said the king. "So go now and let him in." Hi. So she went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in, following at her heels till she reached her chair. Then he stopped and cried, "Lift me up to sit by you." But she delayed doing so until the king ordered her. When once the frog was on the chair, he wanted to get on the table, and there he sat and said, "Now push your golden plate a little nearer so that we may eat together." And so she did, but everybody might see how unwilling she was, and the frog feasted heartily, but every morsel seemed to stick in her throat. "I have had enough now," said the frog at last, "and as I am tired, you must carry me to your room and make ready your silken bed, and we will lie down and go to sleep." Then the king's daughter began to weep and was afraid of the cold frog, that nothing would satisfy him, but he must sleep in her pretty clean bed. Now the king grew angry with her, saying, "That which thou hast promised in thy time of necessity must thou now perform." So she picked up the frog with her finger and thumb, carried him upstairs and put him in a corner, and when she had lain down to sleep, he came creeping up, saying, "I am tired and want sleep as much as you. Take me up, or I will tell your father." Then she felt beside herself with rage, and picking him up, she threw him with all her strength against the wall, crying, "Now will you be quiet, you horrid frog?" But as he fell, he ceased to be a frog, and became all at once a prince with beautiful kind eyes. And it came to pass that, with her father's consent, they became bride and bridegroom. And he told her how a wicked witch had bound him by her spells, and how no one but she alone could have released him, and that they two would go together to his father's kingdom. And there came to the door a carriage drawn by 8 white horses, with white plumes on their heads, with golden harnesses, and behind the carriage was standing faithful Henry, the servant of the young prince. Now faithful Henry had suffered such care and pain when his master was turned into a frog, that he had been obliged to wear 3 iron bands over his heart, to keep it from breaking with trouble and anxiety. When the carriage started to take the prince to his kingdom, and faithful Henry had helped them both in, he got up behind and was full of joy at his master's deliverance. And when they had gone a part of the way, the prince heard a sound at the back of the carriage, as if something had broken, and he turned round and cried, "Henry, the wheel must be breaking." But Henry answered, "The wheel does not break, 'tis the band round my heart, that, to lessen its ache, when I grieved for your sake, I bound round my heart." Again and yet once again there was the same sound, and the prince thought it must be the wheel breaking, but it was the breaking of the other bands from faithful Henry's heart, because it was now so relieved and happy. Yeah. Next is Cat and Mouse in partnership. Cat, having made acquaintance with a mouse, professed such great love and friendship for her as the mouse at last agreed that they should live together and keep house. "We must make provision for the winter," said the cat, "or we shall suffer hunger, and you, little mouse, must not stir out, or you will be caught in a trap." So they took counsel together and bought a little pot of fat. And then they could not tell where to put it for safety, but after long consideration, the cat said there could be no better a place than by the church, for nobody would steal there, and they would put it under the altar and not touch it until they were really in want. So this was done, and the little pot placed in safety. But before long, the cat was seized with a great wish to taste it. "Listen to me, little mouse," said he. "I have been asked by my cousin to stand godfather to the little son she has brought into the world. He is white with brown spots, and they want to have the christening today, so let me go to it, and you will stay home and keep house." "Oh, yes, certainly," answered the mouse. "Pray go by all means, and when you are feasting on all the good things, think of me. I should so like a drop of the sweet red wine." But there was not a word of truth in all this. The cat had no cousin and had not been asked to stand godfather. He went to the church, straight up to the little pot, and licked the fat off the top. He took a walk over the roofs of the town, saw his acquaintances, stretched himself in the sun, and licked his whiskers as often as he thought of the little pot of fat. And then, when it was evening, he went home. "Here you are at last," said the mouse. "I expect you have had a merry time." "Oh, pretty well," answered the cat. "And what name did you give the child?" asked the mouse. "Top Off," answered the cat dryly. "Top Off," cried the mouse. "That is a singular and wonderful name. Is it common in your family?" "What does it matter?" said the cat. "It is not any worse than Crumb Picker, like your godchild." A little time after this, the cat was again seized with a longing. "Again I must ask you," he said to the mouse, "to do me a favor, and keep house alone for a day. I have been asked a second time to stand godfather, and as the little one has a white ring round its neck, I cannot well refuse." So the kind little mouse consented, and the cat crept along by the town wall until he reached the church, and going straight to the little pot of fat, devoured half of it. "Nothing tastes so well as what one keeps to oneself," said he, feeling quite content with his day's work. When he reached home, the mouse asked what name he had been given to the child. "Half Gone," answered the cat. "Half Gone?" cried the mouse. "I never heard such a name in my life. I'll bet it's not to be found in the calendar." Soon after that, the cat's mouth began to water again for the fat. "Good things always come in threes," said he to the mouse. "Again I have been asked to stand godfather. The little one is quite black with white feet, and not any white hair on its body, which such a thing does not happen every day. So you will let me go, won't you?" "Top Off, Half Gone," murmured the mouse. "They are such curious names, I cannot but wonder at them." That's because you are always sitting at home, said the cat, in your little grey frock and hairy tail, never seeing the world and fancying all sorts of things. So the little mouse cleared up the house and set it all in order. Meanwhile, the greedy cat went and made an end of the little pot of fat. Now all is finished, one's mind will be easy, said he, and came home in the evening, quite sleek and comfortable. The mouse asked at once what name had been given to the third child. It won't please you any better than the others, answered the cat. It is called All Gone. All Gone, cried the mouse. What an unheard of name. I never met with anything like it. All Gone. Whatever can it mean? And shaking her head, she curled herself round and went to sleep. After that, the cat was not again asked to stand godfather. Yes. When the winter had come and there was nothing more to be had out of doors, the mouse began to think of their store. Come, cat, said she, we will fetch our pot of fat. How good it will taste, to be sure. Of course it will, said the cat, just as good as if you stuck your tongue out of the window. So they set out, and when they reached the place, they found the pot, but it was standing empty. Oh, now I know what it all meant, cried the mouse. Now I see what sort of partner you have been. Instead of standing godfather, you have devoured it all up. First top off, then half gone, then— Will you hold your tongue, screamed the cat. Another word and I will devour you too. And the poor little mouse, having all gone on her tongue, out it came, and the cat leapt upon her and made an end of her. And that is the way of the world. Thank you. Frankenstein was fun. Frankenstein, not fun, but it was a good book. It was an interesting book. Having, as we all have, grown up with Frankenstein, it being portrayed in just about every form of media, it was interesting to actually read it, and to get a different sort of perspective on it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I say different perspective. I mean, it's the perspective that Mary Shelley created. It's the original one, but it's very good. And it lends a lot more depth to the Halloween character that we all know and love. And thank you. It's very kind. It's a great compliment. Thank you. Okay, we have time for maybe one more, maybe two more. Oh, this one's a page. The Wolf and the Seven Little Goats. Maybe we'll end after that one. There was once an old goat who had 7 little ones and was as fond of them as ever a mother was of her children. One day she had to go into the wood to fetch food for them, so she called them all round her. Dear children, said she, I am going out into the wood, and while I am gone, be on your guard against the wolf. Did I say goat at the start? I'm gonna start over. There was once an old goat who had 7 little ones and was as fond of them as ever a mother was of her children. One day she had to go into the wood to fetch food for them, so she called them all round her. Dear children, said she, I am going out into the wood, and while I am gone, be on your guard against the wolf, for if he were once to get inside, he would eat you up, skin, bones, and all. The wretch often disguises himself, but he may always be known by his hoarse voice and black paws. Dear mother, answered the kids, you need not be afraid. We will take good care of ourselves. And the mother bleated goodbye and went on her way with an easy mind. It was not long before someone came knocking at the house door and crying out, Open the door, my dear children. Your mother has come back and has brought each of you something. But the little kids knew it was the wolf by the hoarse voice. We will not open the door, they cried. You're not our mother. She has a delicate and sweet voice, and your voice is hoarse. You must be the wolf. Then off went the wolf to a shop and bought a big lump of chalk and ate it up to make his voice soft. And then he came back, knocked at the house door and cried, Open the door, my dear children. Your mother is here and has brought each of you something. But the wolf had put up his black paws against the window, and the kids, seeing this, cried out, We will not open the door. Our mother has no black paws like you. You must be the wolf. The wolf ran then to a baker. Baker, said he, I am hurt in the foot. Pray send some dough over the place. And when the baker had plastered his feet, he ran to the miller. Miller, said he, strew me some white meal over my paws. But the miller refused, thinking the wolf must be meaning harm to someone. If you don't do it, cried the wolf, I'll eat you up. And the miller was afraid and did as he was told. And that just shows what men are. Yeah. And now came the rogue the third time to the door and knocked. Open, children, cried he. Your dear mother has come home and brought you each something from the wood. First show us your paws, said the kids, so that we may know if you really are our mother or not. And he put up his paws against the window, and when they saw that they were all white, all seemed right, and they opened the door. And when he was inside, they saw it was the wolf, and they were terrified and tried to hide themselves. One ran under the table, the second got into the bed, the third into the oven, the fourth in the kitchen, the fifth in the cupboard, the sixth under the sink, and the seventh in the clock case. But the wolf found them all and gave them short shrift. One after another he swallowed down, all but the youngest, who was hid in the clock case. And so the wolf, having got what he wanted, strolled forth into the green meadows, and laying himself down under a tree, he fell asleep. Not long after, the mother goat came back from the wood, and oh, what a sight met her eyes! The door was wide open, table, chairs, and stools all thrown about, dishes broken, quilt and pillows torn off the bed. She sought her children. They were nowhere to be found. She called to each of them by name, but nobody answered until she came to the name of the youngest. "Here I am, mother," a little voice cried. "Here in the clock case." And so she helped him out and heard how the wolf had came and eaten all the rest. And you may think how she cried for the loss of her dear children. At last in her grief she wandered out of doors, and the youngest kid with her. And when they came into the meadow, there they saw the wolf lying under a tree and snoring so that the branches shook. The mother goat looked at him carefully on all sides, and she noticed how something inside his body was moving and struggling. "Dear me," thought she, "can it be that my poor children he devoured for his evening meal are still alive?" And she sent the little kid back to the house for a pair of shears, a needle, and a thread. And then she cut the wolf's body open, and no sooner had she made one snip than out came the head of one of the kids, and then another snip, and then one after the other. The 6 little kids all jumped out alive and well, for in his greediness the rogue had swallowed them down whole. How delightful this was! So they comforted their dear mother and hopped about like tailors at a wedding. "Now fetch some good hard stones," said the mother, "and we will fill his body with them as he lies asleep." And so they fetched some all in haste and put them inside him, and the mother sewed him up so quickly again that he was none the wiser. When the wolf at last awoke and got up, the stones inside him made him feel very thirsty, and as he was going to the brook to drink, they struck and rattled against each other. And so he cried out, "What is this I feel inside me, knocking hard against my bones? How should such a thing betide me? They were kids, and now they're stones." So he came to the brook and stooped to drink, but the heavy stones weighed him down, so he fell over into the water and was drowned. And when the 7 little kids saw it, they came up running. "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" they cried, and taking hands, they danced with their mother all about the place. Yeah. Next is one called Faithful John. And I don't think we're going to read it today. Like I said, I will not be doing Grimm's Fairy Tales tomorrow. I will not be on at this time tomorrow. I'm going to be doing after work, so 5:30. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it'll be a later stream tomorrow, and I'm going to do one of the longer stories out of the Necronomicon of H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, I will upload this to YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's the same name as this channel. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks so much for reading with me. Have a great day. Bye.